The U.S. Navy declared Amelia Earhart down at sea in 1937. That conclusion was made before they ever found a single piece of wreckage. For decades, the accepted narrative has been tidy. Earhart and her navigator Fred Noonan ran out of fuel searching for Howland Island. They ditched in the Pacific. They died. Case closed. The theory sits in textbooks, museum placards, and popular memory as historical fact. But the official search began on July 2, 1937, the same day as the disappearance. Within hours, the Navy had already settled on a conclusion. No wreckage, no bodies, no physical evidence whatsoever, yet somehow certainty. Amelia Earhart was born in 1897. By her 30s, she'd shattered records that seemed permanent. First woman to fly solo across the Atlantic, fastest woman to fly across America. She wasn't reckless. She was methodical, obsessive about fuel calculations, meticulous about her aircraft's maintenance. She'd logged over 20,000 flight hours. Noonan, her navigator, was among the best in the world. These weren't amateurs making a fatal mistake. The mission was simple in concept: fly from Lee, New Guinea to Howland Island in the Pacific, a speck of land 6 miles long and half a mile wide. Earhart and Noonan took off on July 2, 1937 at 10 a.m. local time. They had enough fuel for approximately 20 hours of flight. The journey should have taken around 20 hours. It was, by the numbers, a tight but feasible plan. Radio contact was maintained for most of the flight. At 8:43 a.m. Howland time, roughly 20 hours into the journey, Earhart transmitted. She was unable to locate the island. The Idaska Coast Guard cutter positioned near Howland heard her voice. "We are running north and south," she was searching. Then at 8:43 a.m., one final transmission. "We are on the line 157-337, a line of position. A bearing, then silence." The Navy's official conclusion came fast. Fuel exhaustion, ditching at sea, the aircraft sank. No wreckage would ever be found because it went down in deep water. For 40 years, this explanation satisfied the public, but in the 1970s, researchers began asking uncomfortable questions. Where was the debris field, aircraft leave trails, oil slicks, floating material? The Idaska conducted an extensive search. It found nothing. Here's where the official story begins to fracture. Howland Island lies on a north-south line. Earhart's last bearing 157-337 is an east-west line. They are perpendicular. If she was searching for Howland on a north-south pattern and transmitted that she was on an east-west line, she wasn't near Howland at all. She was somewhere else, somewhere 350 miles away. Gardner Island. Gardner Island, now Nikumaroro, is a coral atoll in the Phoenix Islands. In 1937, it was uninhabited. It had a lagoon, it had fresh water, it had wreckage from an earlier shipwreck. If Earhart and Noonan reached Gardner instead of Howland, they could have landed. They could have survived, not forever, but long enough to send signals, and indeed. Radio operators across the Pacific reported hearing transmissions from what they believed was Earhart's aircraft for weeks after the disappearance. In 1940, a British colonial officer visited Gardner Island. He found human bones, a shoe, fragments that might have been from a woman's skeleton. The bones were sent to Fiji for analysis. A doctor examined them and concluded they belonged to a male of Polynesian descent. The bones were then lost, misplaced, never re-examined with modern forensic techniques. The official Navy line dismissed the Gardner Island theory entirely. It didn't fit the narrative, but the radio men who heard those post-disappearance signals were credible. One was a nun in California. Another was an amateur operator in Kentucky. They weren't seeking attention. They reported what they'd heard to authorities. The signals stopped coming in late August 1937. By then, Earhart and Noonan would have been without supplies for weeks. In 1989, a partial skeleton was found on Gardner Island. Modern DNA analysis could have answered everything, but the specimen was incomplete and had deteriorated. Testing was inconclusive. Still, the location matched, the timeline matched, the survival scenario was plausible, yet the U.S. Navy never officially reconsidered its position. The Gardner Island theory remained fringe. The real explanation isn't dramatic, it's quieter. Earhart likely flew on a bearing that took her to Gardner Island instead of Howland. Navigation error, instrument failure, radio miscommunication. We'll never know. She landed. She and Noonan survived for some time. They sent signals. No one came. The transmissions stopped. The island was uninhabited. Rescue never arrived. They died there on a speck of land waiting. The Navy's official story persists because it's simpler. A ditching at sea requires no follow-up, no wreckage to explain, no bones to identify, no admission of a missed rescue opportunity. Gardner Island demanded investigation. It demanded resources. It demanded accountability. So the Navy closed the case before evidence could complicate the narrative. What we know is this: Amelia Earhart didn't vanish into myth. She died in a specific place under specific circumstances. The evidence points to Gardner Island. It points to a landing. It points to survival, then silence. The Navy chose not to look. They chose not to ask hard questions. And in choosing not to look, they buried the truth under decades of official certainty. Subscribe, there's a new unsolved case every week, and some of them have evidence that rewrites what we thought we knew. Subscribe, there's a new unsolved case every week, and some of them have evidence that rewrites what we thought we knew.